Welcome back to the channel. You see the information on the screen, so you already know what I'm about. So let's get into it. About a week and a half ago, of this recording, I actually had my very first live, and I had, one or two people that popped up, and then I even saw some things in the comments around that time that let me know, that there are a lot of young men that are watching a lot of my videos, especially men between the ages of 18 all the way up to about 30, 32-ish. This is who this video is particularly for. And I understand that a lot of people are really trying to find their way. And then we also have issues where a lot of men may or may not have had a father. And then they might have also found themselves in situations where it becomes very difficult for them to either understand women or understand, really their path in life, and they're trying to find their purpose. And I wanted to do a video that just kind of goes into it. So I am going to be a little quick as I go from one thing or to the next so that this video won't be too long. But I did want to put up something, to help, men that are kind of going through and they're trying to figure out, how to live this life well. All right. So lesson one, very first thing is I definitely encourage you not to fall into the trap of anger. All right. The world works in a certain way. All right. And you have the biblical mindset of the world, and then you have the world, which for us Christians, we say that Satan rules, and he actually comes up with the way that it works. And all Satan does is basically just manipulate the things of God. All right. So God is really how it works. And then, the devil comes in and he kind of manipulates it. But even if you want to take, the devil out of the equation, you're basically still dealing with a situation where the world works a certain way. The main thing in order to understand the world well and to actually accomplish most of what you are trying to accomplish in life, the best way to actually do it is to do it as close to a biblical way as possible. All right? Because the way the Bible is really set up, it's set up to win. It's trying to get you around pitfalls in order to win. And that's why I always encourage people to read Proverbs and to read Matthew. And for most of the men, definitely read Proverbs. If I was you, like I said, I would read a chapter of Proverbs a day, at least for 1 year, so that you can put most of them in, I would say, your baseline memory. I'm not saying that you have to memorize them, but I am basically saying that you want it to be where when something happens, it comes to mind as to, okay, oh, I remember this. And you need to kind of understand what each proverb means, because unfortunately, sometimes we can get a little confused by what someone is saying, in one passage or another. But the core here is do not allow yourself to get angry. It is very easy to get angry because you feel like the world is not treating, giving you a fair hand. You feel like some guys, and or some women are just genetically in a better position or financially in a better position. But the truth is you can get there too. But if you lean in on anger, what it's going to do is it's going to stop you dead in your tracks. And it's going to put you in this mode of overthinking, right? And then as you start to overthink and as you start to search through social media for people that validate your feelings, that are basically talking about the same anger that you feel, you're really not in a place of growth, right? And so you're going to hurt yourself a lot more by staying in that place of anger. The better way to see it is just to understand that the world works a certain way. And because it works that way, what you have to do is align yourself with the way that it works. Now, when I say this, I'm not saying the way that the devil says it should work. I'm saying the way that God has aligned it to work. All right. And then once you do that, you're going to find a lot more success in your life than failure. And remember that you have the ability to do anything that you want. There is nothing outside of your abilities. All right. So no matter what anyone has told you in the past, no matter what you have gone through, no matter if people have told you you will never be about anything, at the end of the day, you can still do it, but you have to believe in yourself. And that's not anything that anybody out here can really fix. That's something that you have to fix on your own. And one of the first steps to doing that is to be healthy. All right. Because a lot of people are walking around America and they are depressed. When we look at the average American is overweight. The average American is depressed. The average American is on some kind of drug. And our commercials and our media lean into that. Even a lot of the studies that we research, they lean into that. They're not ever really looking at what happens if you follow the healthiest people. Instead, they like to follow the quote unquote average person. But once we start to really look at the average person, we basically quickly see that we don't want to be the average person. All right. So that's why I encourage you all, to join something like Planet Fitness. I think they did go up on their prices. I think now they're $15 a month. But if you cannot do that, I'm going to be honest with you, just put on some shorts and a shirt and make sure that you go running every day. You can get you an app on your phone that will basically track this for you. And a lot of these apps are free, and you want to be able, as a man, you definitely want to be able. So 3 miles about 4 times a week is what you need to be able to jog. Okay. And when I'm talking about, I'm saying like a jog walk. So you should be able to jog about a mile and a quarter. Then you can walk for about 100 yards. Then you should be able to pick it up again and be able to jog for another mile and a quarter, and then walk another 100 yards, and then, again, end it that way. You should be able to do that. If you cannot do that, then you're not healthy. All right. And you need to be in that mode. Again, you need to get away from processed food. You need to get away from sugar. You need to get away from anything that is going to slow you down. All right. Because these things are meant to put you in a kind of zombie-esque state, which is where most Americans are. All right. And you'll be surprised if you can take this upon yourself, even for a couple of years, it really will change your life. Now, I know that, again, some of you come from backgrounds where, your mother might have fed you certain things and have given you certain things, and you might be eating a lot of fried chicken and stuff like that. And I'm not saying you have to give that stuff up forever, but you definitely need to minimize it. Okay, you need to be eating more vegetables. Okay, and if you do have to eat a meat, you want to make sure that you're eating more of a baked meat. Okay, and once you start getting money, once you start making money, you need to put the first set of money not in new cars, not in new clothes, but you need to put it towards your food. Okay, because food is expensive. All right, and the best food, okay, is going to be more expensive. Like if you're going to eat chicken, you need to eat organic chicken, probably or preferably from a small farm. Okay, and not from these big companies and these big box stores that you go into like Walmart and trying to get your chicken and your beef from them, because that beef generally, all that kind of meat is generally not the best. So if you have the opportunity to go to a small farm in your area, that's really where you want to go. And I know even for red meat, if you're going to eat it, there are a lot of places that have kosher meat or halal meat. I think that's how the Muslims say it. You want to go get that meat because that's going to be a much better quality meat, but it's going to cost you, twice as much. So as soon as you start making money, that's really where you want to go first. And again, the reason why is because your health determines everything. All right. It determines how clear your mind is. It determines how much energy you have. And all of that matters, especially when you're younger, because you're going to go further if you can start well. Lesson 2, you really need to know who you are. On this channel, I talk a lot about 3 different types of personalities: the instinct type, the heart type, and the thinking type. And even though I know, and I don't want you all to make this an idol, but I know God is calling you to higher levels, but you still need to understand kind of where you are, right? And instinct types, I doubt that there's a lot of instinct types that follow me, because instinct types, how you know you're an instinct type is that when you were younger and you're hanging around with your friends, you were the one that was generally coming up with what you were going to do. So you sit around like 3 or 4 of you, and then you're the person that says, oh, let's play video games, or oh, let's go to the movies, or oh, let's go for a walk, or oh, let's play basketball. If that was you and everybody generally on average listened to you, then more than likely you're instinct type. You have more of the energy of trying to own your own business, or trying to go up the corporate ladder, or trying to do whatever it is in order to bring to you the things that you want. And you generally have more energy to do business for a long period of time. When I'm talking about business, I'm talking about doing whatever it takes in order for you to make your money, right? And then if you're a heart type, you tend to be a little bit more romantic, okay? So this is when you were in middle school and high school, you wanted to bring, flowers and candy and stuff like that, towards women. You wanted to sit back and have this mindset of, oh, it could be so romantic if I show up this way or show up that way. You tend to volunteer more, okay? You tend to want to help out. That is heart-based energy, all right? And then most of the people, if you don't fall into those one or two categories, you're probably thinking type. And most of the people that follow are more than likely are thinking type people, okay, both men and women. And there's reasons for this. But again, we're not going to go into that in this particular video. And the reason why you need to know is because that is going to determine a lot of your best case scenarios. Most of the time, okay, most of the advice that you get is based off the thinking type personality. That is the number one type of personality that's in the world. These are people that are generally looking for advice. They're looking for information on how to live their life and or how to deal with a certain situation in their life at this moment. And because of that, okay, that is why a lot of these places exist. But as a thinking type, you can get very caught up in multiple teachers. And all these teachers are trying to teach you something totally different that will contradict what it is. So you as a thinking type have to figure out, okay, what is the true best solution to get to the life that I want, right? And as a thinking type, you need to put yourself around people that are going to edify you and that are actually going to take you to the next level. So again, as a thinking type man, because we're mainly talking to men today, if you know that you are out here and you really want to make that money is the grind that you want, you have to put yourself around people that are making money, right? You have to read books about making money and about strategies on how making money. All making money is basically finding something that works, okay? And then you take that idea, once you've done it once or twice, and you're gonna make some mistakes here and there, and you don't be afraid of making the mistake. But once you figured out something, you take that concept and then you just do it again. That's all it is. That's all success is. So for instance, I've always talked about, you could start a business of, making sandwiches. So you make this sandwich and then you take it around to your neighbors and you say, hey, would you like to buy a sandwich from me? I'll make it homemade. There's nothing bad in it, blah, blah, blah. I'll make it. I'll bring it to you, every day for $5 or $10 or whatever it is. So at that point, you built your business. So once you figured out this formula, don't leave the formula. Just take that same concept and you do it again. So you start with your neighborhood. Once you get some few people there, you go to the next neighborhood and you do it again. You take it from there, you go to the next neighborhood and you do it again. And that's how you build. All right? Now, I know most thinking types, they really don't want to work for themselves. They probably want to work for someone else. But even if you work for someone else, again, it's the same concept. How do you become really great in the company? You do it by figuring out, okay, what do the managers want? What does this environment want? And then, again, you rinse and repeat. All right? And that is how you basically build up. And then you also look at the people that have gone before you. So thinking types more than likely will have to lean more into school. They'll have to lean more into certifications. They'll have to lean more into paper-based, acknowledgement for your success. All right? But the one thing I would tell you about jobs, especially because I'm mainly, again, talking now from 18 years old all the way up to 32, is the very first job you get, I definitely encourage you to stay at least 4 years. But after you have done that first job for about 4 or 5 years, don't stay beyond 5 years. Immediately what you want to do, unless they're just giving you super duper raises and this is just the best company ever, you really want to jump into another company, and then you basically want to stay at that company maybe 2.5 to 3 years until you make another jump. And the reason why you do this is because very few companies are actually going to give you what we call a real raise, right? They don't want to give you that. They're going to try to give you 3 or 4% on average. And 3% is barely above inflation. And I know many of you might not truly understand inflation, but all it means is that every single year, the cost of something goes up. So like when I think about, like my dad, he would talk about things like a loaf of bread used to be a quarter. When he was growing up, a loaf of bread was a quarter. Well, now a loaf of bread is almost $4. So how did it get that way? Well, that's inflation. So every year it's going up about 2.8%. And so if you do that over 70 years, 100 years, or whatever it is, you end up with bread starting out at 25 cents and now it's basically $4. So if you are not getting a raise over 3%, you're actually losing money. And that's really important for you to understand because it's real easy to get caught up. Because when you come out, you might get a job that's making $60,000 a year. And then maybe 10 years later, you're like, wow, I'm making $100,000 a year. But you have to base that off of inflation. If inflation, if, like I said, that's taking 15 years, that $100,000 is not worth $100,000 anymore. It is now maybe just worth $65,000. So you might have started at 50 and now you're at 65, and then you wonder why you don't have the buying power. And that's why you have to jump jobs, right? So after about 3.5, like I say, 2.5 to 3 years, generally, definitely after your first job, you don't want to be there more than 4 years because you don't want to be stuck in their system. Instead, what you want to do is hop to the next job so you can make more money, okay? And then go to the next level, right? So you always want to do that. Now, once you turn 45-ish, you need to sit. You need to stop hopping jobs because that's going to start to hurt you as you start to get into your 40s. So somewhere between 40 and 45, you need to stop doing that. And then at that point, you need to, if you have not done investments, you need to start really getting serious about investments because there is a point that as you start to get older, you get to this thing called ageism. And ageism is real. Okay, and it starts to kick in, the closer you get to 50. So a lot of companies, they want to see someone who's stable. All right. So at that point, if you're hopping around from job to job, every 3 to 4 years in your 40s, that doesn't look good. In your 20s and 30s, people will put up with it. But as you get into your 40s and 50s, they want you to stay 7 years, 8 years, all right, in order to be stable. So you need to think about that, especially if you're going to work for someone else. But I definitely encourage everyone to try to get 1 or 2 rental properties. Okay, again, I'm not going to go into that, but that's going to be a better investment for you, in your retirement years than anything else. 5 rental properties will take care of you if you can get them fully paid off, by the time, you turn 50. If you can do that, then that you can retire at 50 and be done. It's also to note that if you are 18 or 22, if you go into the military and or if you go into, being a police officer, you can retire after 20 years. Okay, so that, again, is something else that you should be thinking about because this really works well with thinking-based people, right? So it's something for you to think about for you to get ahead. All right. Lesson 3, don't worry as much about women in your 20s and early 30s. All right, especially in your 20s more so than your early 30s. And I know that this can be very difficult because honestly, let's be real, your hormones, as people say, are raging. And the strongest you will ever be, from a sexual desire perspective towards the opposite sex is in your, late teens and early 20s. But unfortunately, this is not necessarily the best time for you to choose a mate. Okay, this is women's best time to choose a mate. And a lot of people in society are going back and forth over this, but many of you, like I said, because I know some of you have had a little bit of that anger energy, so you've kind of gone around, and listened to different people. But no matter what the situation is, most people, when they look again at statistics, what they see is that women do best when they pick their partners in their 20s. But men tend to do better when they pick their partner in their 30s. All right? Now, again, we talked in the beginning about anger. Okay. And a lot of men get angry because women, are out here and they're winning, quote unquote, in their 20s. And they might be ignoring you while you are, in your 20s and they're in their 20s and these are your friends. These are the women you're interested in talking to. But you should not allow yourself to get angry. You have to have more of a mindset of that's not your woman. You might be attracted to her. You might went to school with her. You might have had a crush on her. But at the end of the day, that's really not your woman. And there's plenty of women that not only will look like the women that you had around you, but they will act like the women that you had around you. All right. Personalities are finite. There's only so many personalities in the world. Now, we might all have different experiences, but there are a finite amount of personalities. Now, there's a lot of them, but there are a finite amount. Like I've said before in some of my other videos, I've gone through and I figured out that there's about 500 distinct personalities. However, even in that 500, you can kind of knock it down to anywhere between 70 all the way down to 3. All right. It just depends upon which personality test you are looking at. But no matter what the situation is, these variations in personality aren't quite as large as what you think they are. So a woman that you were interested in college or technical school or in high school, you will find that woman again 10 years, and she might be 10 years younger. And trust me, you will. Even when you look at things like Zodiac, and I don't like to deal with Zodiac too much because a lot of Christians don't like it, but a lot of people are just simply familiar with it. There are 12 different Zodiacs, and people will say that a Scorpio is a Scorpio, an Aquarius is an Aquarius, a Gemini is a Gemini. And so when you look at all the age groups, people are saying this from people that are 16 all the way up to people that are 80, everybody, a Gemini is a Gemini, right? And it works the same thing with Myers-Briggs. When you're dealing with Myers-Briggs, they give you 16 distinct personalities. And it does not matter if someone is an INTJ, okay, that is 20 years old, they will still be an INTJ at 80 years old. And their personality is pretty much the same. So if you are attracted to a certain type of person, okay, at 18, trust me, when you turn 28 and 30, that woman still exists, okay, in a younger body, okay, at those ages. So you can easily find that personality again. We think we're really unique, but we're really not. Okay, and the people who do better in this life are really the people who have gotten really great advice or really great teaching, and they're aligning themselves with that teaching, and they're allowing themselves to get ahead. All right. But when we go off course, even for 2 or 3 years, it can really throw us off versus getting everything right along the path. The next lesson is about your purpose. And you might have heard about this over and over again from a lot of different people online. And if you are instinct-based, okay, you probably already know what your purpose is. This is your desire. This is what you want out of life, right? If you are heart-based, you might lean into the purpose of caring about people or doing something for the community because that's generally where heart-based people align. And remember, when I talk about these personalities, you have your hybrids that work in between. So you still have your instinct heart, and you'll have your thinking heart and different things like that, right? It's not 100% one way or another. And like I've told you all before, I'm instinct heart. That's about the best way, to kind of understand how my personality runs. That being said, your purpose is going to be something that you enjoy doing, but at the same time, okay, can either make you money or, sometimes you might be in a situation, like I said, with me, with God, where it's glorifying God. But no matter what the situation is, it should be something that you can do. That's going to be your purpose. Now, for a lot of thinking-based people, okay, it's harder for them to find their purpose. And the reason why it's harder is because of not only the overthinking aspect of the thinking personality, but it's also because many thinking-based people really don't want that life. And it's okay not to want that life. I'm not going to play games with you about trying to tell everybody that they're supposed to be a business owner, okay? Because that's not true. Being a business owner stresses certain people out. Okay? So you don't necessarily need that, but you need to know what you're going to do from a work, job, life. Okay? You need to understand that. And you need to be okay with it, because that is going to dictate a lot of what you do in your life. And you can actually become a millionaire by being a school teacher. But that just means that you have to make investments, and you have to be very smart in how you're going to basically do your life. The most important thing is for you to be stable. That is more important than anything else. Because even if you have right now a job that makes $50,000 a year, and you believe, okay, even with inflation and me getting raises and things like that, I'm probably always going to revolve around this $50,000 mark. Like I say, even over 10 years, it might technically be 65 or 70, but because of inflation, it's really the same amount. As long as you know that, and as long as you have that stable money as a thinking type, what you can do is you can plan. And it is the planning that allows you to get ahead. Because if you, like I say, if you have $50,000 a year, you can try to live off $35,000 a year, and then you can take that other $15,000 a year, and through information from a book or something else, you can take that, invest it, and then over the course of 10 years, now that money, which was be about what, 150 at that point, you can actually, that could have turned into true income that you could run with for the rest of your life. But you can't do that if you're not stable. All right? You have to be stable, and you have to have a plan. So as a thinking type person, you have to have a plan. And even as a heart type person, you need to have a plan. Now, an instinct type person, their plan is to do it for themselves. Okay, so they're going to go down a totally different route. And the reason why I tell you this, again, guys, is because a lot of the information that you're getting from different people out here, what they're assuming is that you act like them. They're assuming that you have the same energy as them. See, me as an instinct type, I can actually work much longer than the average thinking type or heart type. I have more of a drive naturally than a lot of thinking types and heart types. But there are drawbacks to being instinct type. Like most instinct types, we're not that close to our emotions. Right? So we don't really understand like women as much as thinking types and heart types do. And because of that, that actually gives us something that's a little bit of a burden that we actually have to figure out later on in our life. Even when we deal with interpersonal relationships, like with our mother or with our sister or even with our father, we don't quite get them as much as a thinking type or an instinct type does, if this makes sense. So you have to remember that everybody has a strength and everybody has a weakness. Don't be upset about where you are right now. But what God is calling you to do is always move to be your best. And you're going to become your best by educating yourself. And like I said, as a thinking type, you always have to be in education mode. Okay? That is how thinking types win. Heart types win by basically understanding that they're a heart type and then fighting against the heavy duty emotional traps that are basically laid for the heart type. So like when I was talking about exercise and different things like that, a lot of heart type men are just like heart type women. They can fall into the trap of they don't want to exercise. They don't want to, get out there and be really healthy and things like that. And so what it does is when they go out and they're trying to date, they don't get the opportunity to date some of the women that they might be the most attracted to. All right? So you have to consider all of these factors in order to win. Another lesson about women, do not be upset because women right now, like I said, might not like you, or you feel that women act a certain way, and because they act this certain way, you're getting frustrated. In a woman's subconscious, okay, there is a program, okay, a program that God gave them. It's the same thing in your subconscious as a man. There is a program that God gave you. Women are simply going down the program in which God gave them. Now, the women who have actually been raised well are going to act totally different than the women out here that were raised poorly. A lot of the stuff that you see on social media, which might scare you, worry you, anger you, frustrate you, many times are the worst case scenarios. And just because a woman has a lot of money or she's dead broke, it doesn't matter. If you see her or see people talking about her and they're trying to use her as an example, she's still not a good example for every single woman, because what you're dealing with is some women, like I said, that just weren't raised well. All right. And then you have another set of women that were raised well. Now, no matter whether or not you're going to think about dating women that are in the United States versus dating women that are abroad, you still need to understand that a woman is going to want you to protect, to provide, and to lead. And you need to be okay with that. You need to not think of it as a burden on your life and not to see it as painful. This is what women desire. And if you are basically fighting that, it is the equivalent of you going outside and ramming your head against a brick wall, thinking that you're not going to hurt yourself, but you're going to hurt the brick wall. And this is why I encourage you not to lean into anger, because all anger does is it gets you nowhere and it makes you sit in one spot without moving forward, right? Because a woman's energy is not going to change. Her sexual nature is not going to change. What women want is not going to change. It doesn't matter how many videos you watch. It doesn't matter how much you get riled up into your emotions. At the end of the day, it's not going to change a thing. You have to give women what they're looking for. And when you give them what they're looking for, then you win. All right. And I wish, honestly, somebody had told me that when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, because it would have removed a heck of a lot of drama in my life. And this is why, again, I always encourage you, and this is where I do agree with a lot of people in social media. As a man, you do not need to chase women. Okay. You don't need to do that. Instead, what you need to do is you need to focus in on your purpose, and your purpose is going to bring you into provision. You see how that works? Because we talked about money. So your purpose brings you into provision. When you are providing and you have the ability to provide, and you have that ability that you're head and shoulders above the average man, not necessarily saying in height, but as in energy, that's going to give you a little bit more favor. All right. And then as you have learned to lead, which I'm always encouraging you all, if nothing else, you can learn to lead by volunteering at your church, by volunteering at different places, because all leading is taking the information that you have, that you've learned in life, okay, no matter where you got that source information from, and then helping other people to apply it, and learning how to allow other people to depend on you so that you can answer their questions, okay, or to get them into a better place. That is leadership. That's all it is. And then the final thing is protection. And what have I talked about? You got to be in the gym, or you got to be running. You got to have health, right? Because if you're healthy, again, that is going to give you a place where you're going to be stronger. And that's going to be very attractive to women, because they want this concept that you can protect them. And that is literally physically protecting them from harm. And when you do that, you're going to level yourself up in all of those areas. But don't get, like I said, don't get caught up in the anger of it, of saying, oh, well, I don't want to do that. These women don't want to listen to me, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about that. You have to focus instead on getting those things in your favor, okay, which is going to also give you more confidence, when you are dating. Now, I do encourage you, if you want marriage as a man, to start looking towards marriage as you start to get into your late 20s, early 30s. And when you date, I encourage you, okay, if you've gone this route, to date women much younger than you. And when I say much younger, I'm talking about 4 to 5 years or more. Many of you might not quite understand how that works, but again, I'm going to try to be very real with you. It is not uncommon for a man that is 60 years old to be able to date a woman that is 35. That is not uncommon. There's a guy that I knew, and he basically was, I'll just be real. He was a custodial worker. He was a straight up custodial worker. And he didn't make all that much money, but he had his life together. He could afford what he wanted to afford. He could do what he wanted to do. And here this guy is, like I say, 60 plus years old, and he's dating a woman that's around 35, 36. All right. And I don't know if he's still dating her, but when I knew him, he had dated her for at least 2 or 3 years. All right. It is not uncommon if the man has everything that he is trying to get and trying to do, he can do that. As a man, you don't need to try to talk to women right around your age. And this is going to be where a lot of women I know that are watching this video might be a little bit upset. But I'm just going to be real. It is better for most men, okay, to date women that are younger. It's not about being in control. It's more about this is when you want a certain thing out of life, and this is when she wants a certain thing out of life. All right. And a woman's best time for children and marriage is going to be in her 20s. Where for you as a man, you might take you a while to get some of the economic things that you need. It might take you a while to do it. Just like I said, if you're taking $15,000 a year, from a job to do an investment, well, if you started that at 23, 24, now you're 34. Okay, so now in that 10 years, that investment might actually turn into something. So that's around the time when you would be looking to get married. You see how all this makes sense? So now when you're talking to this woman that's much younger, okay, you have more of what she's looking for. All right. Now, just because she's younger doesn't mean that you should treat her any kind of way, that you should look down upon her or anything like that. You always want to treat women, okay, with the respect and leadership, okay, like Jesus. All right. And what that basically means is your servant leader. Okay. It doesn't mean that you put all her needs and wants above yours. Okay. All it means is that you're making sure that her needs are met, that you're making sure that she feels taken care of. Okay. And that you're loving her properly and not loving her in a very selfish way. All right. But it works better when you as a man have had time to get what you want out of life a little bit more and then find a wife. All right. And a woman that's in her 20s is generally going to want, especially if she's been trained properly, she's going to want marriage and she's going to want to start having children. Now, you do have sets of women that believe their 20s is meant for fun. Okay. And those are the women I would encourage you to leave alone. Okay. Because again, those women are being taught by the world that this is how they're supposed to move. Now, I know that, again, there'll be women that'll watch this video and then they'll try to get frustrated by that. But you shouldn't, as a woman, get frustrated by that because, number one, I am going to make a video for women that mirrors this one. But then, again, this is made more for younger people, all right, and for the best case scenario in order to get the life that people want, out here, all right? And again, women should watch when they come into men's spaces, especially when we're trying to help men to become the men that women say that they want. The final thing that I'm going to say in this particular video, and I've said it a couple of times, is you need to have your own set of rules and regulations, okay, that you're going to live your life by. And the reason why you need this is because you need to have structure in your life. Now, I definitely lean you into the Bible, but as you lean into the Bible, do not become so rules-based. Because a lot of men lean so heavily into the rules and regulations of God that you have no grace in your heart. All right. And when you do that, you become so structured that it becomes very difficult, for people to deal with you. You have to remember that God has grace, that he allows us to make mistakes and that people are going to make mistakes. So you don't want to bring a woman into an environment that you're so rules and regulations based that now it's very difficult for her to deal with life. Instead, what you're doing is you're using your rules and regulations as a foundation in order to build the type of life that you want for you and your family. All right? And remember, guys, especially thinking-based guys, that women are going to test you on your rules and regulations. And no matter what the situation is, always stand by your rules and regulations. If you are standing by that about 90% of the time, like I said, you still want to have grace. But if you're following your rules about 90% of the time, that is going to make the woman feel comfortable. But if you tend to be wishy-washy, where one day you're saying one thing and then the next day you're allowing her to get away with something. You really want the woman to continue to respect you. That's a lot more important than her loving you. All right? She needs to respect you. And the only way she's going to respect you is if you do what you say you're going to do. And you have to make sure that she understands that you're going to stand on that. All right? But you can make her life a very good life. You can be romantic to her. You can love her. You can buy her stuff. You can try to allow some of her hopes and dreams to come true. It is nothing wrong with that. That does not make you a simp. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that the woman is fully in first before you go down that route. So heart-based men and men who have a little bit more romantic energy, that's why you just hold back a little bit until you feel like the woman is on board. And then once she's on board, then you can release some of that to her. And that can be very tricky for women, to kind of navigate when they want a more romantic man. But that is a conversation that I'll have with them. And that is really none of your concern as a man. All right. So this is just one of the first, types of videos that I kind of want to make sure that I'm putting out there to try to help many of you to get to the place that you want to go. Because you can have the life that you want. And it doesn't matter if you had your dad, growing up, or you didn't have your dad growing up. It doesn't matter if you did well in high school or you didn't do well. It doesn't matter if you went to college or you didn't go to college. Right now, you have to look at yourself right now. And you have to figure out, okay, what can I do? How can I take this point and take it forward? And no matter what you do, you have to be committed to it for 5 to 7 years. So if you say, hey, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to be a police officer, I'm going to be a firefighter, I'm going to go into the Army, you have to be more than okay with doing that, for 5 to 7 years. You have to be committed to doing that for a certain amount of time. If you don't do that, that's not going to help you. All right. Now, I know you heard me talk about jobs and leaving jobs, but a job is totally different than when you're going in and you're becoming a police officer. If you're going to be a police officer, you need to be a police officer, for a little bit longer time. Now, like you said, you can jump departments and different things like that, but you need to be that police officer for that 20 years or so that you can retire in it and or in the Army, okay, or Navy or Air Force, Marines, blah, 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 right? So you just kind of need to figure out, like I said, which direction that you want to go, but you have to be committed to it. And like I said, don't worry so much about the women. If you get everything you're supposed to get, okay, you can find a woman. And whether or not that woman is here in the United States or abroad, you can find her. Now, in this time, I'm not saying don't date. But what I am saying is you can date a woman, kind of get to know the woman a little bit, figure out how to become a little bit better in dating. But then if it's not exactly what you're looking for, then you can just move away from that. Let that woman go so she can find her husband. Don't try to hold on to her like a lot of people do. Just let her go and then continue with your purpose. But you don't allow a woman to distract you from your purpose, especially within the first 10 years of your adult life. This is the time when you're trying to establish that foundation so you can move forward. And it's really hard to reestablish a foundation at 30, 40, 50. It becomes more and more difficult as you get older. But if you establish that foundation, then the rest of your life is going to be much easier. Okay, and again, as you're doing this and as you're understanding your type, you need to also understand the type of woman that you are attracted to. All right, and that's really important. But again, I've talked a lot about that in other videos, so I'm not going to go too deep on that in this video. Anyway, please like, please subscribe. If you guys are interested in membership, that join button is down there. And I'm going to see you guys in the very next video.